Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of revenge and neighbors from hell stories. If you ever had to deal with any neighbors from hell, then please don't forget to share your own story either in the comments or on r/Ripe Stories on Reddit. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. This one is titled Took on a Shady Chicago Towing Company and Won. Alright, I will try to keep this short, but it's got a lot of information and I'm so proud of what happened, I might ramble. I hope it qualifies as revenge, but please be kind if you don't think so, I am emotionally weak. In the spring, I decided to use a massage gift card at a local chain and scheduled one for 10 AM on a Saturday. Of course I forgot about it until my alarm went off at 9:45 and I saw the calendar alert on my phone. Cue an enormous freak out because if you forfeit the cost of the massage, nearly $100 if you don't show, I woke up my husband and begged him to drive me because his car is parked right out back and mine is parked a block away. He begrudgingly got out of bed and we ran to the car. I arrived 20 minutes late and he agreed he would wait for me in the parking lot of the shopping center until I was done, since at this point my massage hour was nearly halfway over. My massage goes great, but when I come up to the desk to check out, the woman working there apologizes and says that while I was in the room, my husband received a boot on his car when he left the parking lot to grab coffee. She says it happens all the time, even to workers of the shopping center, because the towing guy just sits in his truck on the property and waits to boot people. She said she ran out there and tried to stop it and argue with the guy that I was a paying customer, but the towing operator just laughed at her. They gave me half of the massage for the trouble. I run out and hope to argue our case. My husband is pissed. The operator told him he would remove the boot if his boss said he could, so my husband called and tried to explain, but the minute he admitted to leaving the property, the boss said, "I have you on tape admitting you left the parking lot. You are screwed, nothing you can do, pay to remove the boot." I tried to defuse the situation by explaining that I was a paying customer and thus we didn't technically break the rules of the parking lot. The towing guy says we have to pay, but that we can argue our case by calling the office afterwards. So we pay, and when we get home I call the office and explain, and the guy who answers just says, "I talked to your husband, he is an a-hole. Maybe if he hadn't been such a dick, I would do something about it. You can try and call back tomorrow and speak to a different manager, but I don't know that they will help you either." Great, now I am fuming, my husband is pissed and it is my fault for making him drive me in the first place. I proceed to do a ton of research on towing laws and reporting fraud. I file a report with the BBB, I email the owner of the company, I file a report with the city of Chicago, I do everything I can think of and then I just forget about it. $140 is a chunk of change since my husband is in full-time graduate school and I am working long hours to make ends meet, but we will survive. 2 months later, I get an email from the city saying that they reviewed my claim and they signed with the towing company, but that I can call to dispute, which I did. Tony, the guy handling my complaint, tells me that the towing company sent over a recording of me. The tape is listed with my name/case number, where I admit to leaving the shopping mall/parking lot. I tell him that is impossible. I literally never left the parking lot, so there's absolutely no way you could have a tape that has me admitting that. I tell him my whole story. Tony says he will discuss with his manager and get back to me. I get a call later in the day and it is Tony again. He says that he listened to the tape again and that something is not right. The woman on the tape the towing company sent over admits to leaving the parking lot to go to the liquor store across the street to buy wine. So it is not me. He strongly infers that they are trying to screw me over without actually saying it and says that he told them to send the correct tape by the end of the day or refund me my money. Tony calls again the next day and says that he cannot legally be the middleman, but that I should call the company and give them my information and they will send me a check. So I do that. I am sweet as sugar to the grumpy man on the line. 1 week later a check comes by certified mail. I leave a voicemail for Tony worshipping the ground he walks on for believing me and fighting for me. I know this might seem lame, but to anyone who has ever had to deal with a shady towing/booting company, it is the biggest win possible. I was walking on air for weeks. I thought it was a little more than petty revenge, but maybe not exactly regular revenge. Thanks for reading this incredibly long tale. Update: today I got a letter in the mail that the city of Chicago sued the towing company for breaching contract and won $1,040 for improper placement of boot. They messed with the wrong girl with a lot of time on her hands. If they had simply removed the boot and admitted they are wrong, they would have been out of nothing. Now they are out 10 times what they charged me for the booting. And guys, I would love to know, have you ever had to deal with such types of parking scams? I gotta say, here in Thailand a few times I have parked in places that obviously seemed like public property, but then out of nowhere a guy comes and demands money. Obviously, since I'm a guest in this country, it is tough to verify whether that is legit or a scam, but most of the time the money you have to pay is way less than $1, so it's like whatever. And the next one is titled, "Am I the butthole for getting our neighbors arrested after repeatedly warning them?" My wife and I moved out here to the middle of nowhere, bought an unzoned vacant property, we got all the legalities figured out, got permits and built our house out here. The previous owner apparently intended to create a large public outdoor pool. They built a huge pool enclosure, but then abandoned the project and sold the property. They also had a bunch of neighbor issues we inherited. Our neighbors thought the pool enclosure/pool was an eyesore. We agreed with them and made it clear that we were figuring out how to correct it. We ended up filling in the pool, restoring the enclosure to make it like a greenhouse, and created a huge vivaria. Neighbors still had issues, and it took us until this point to realize that they were trespassing onto the property to examine what we were doing. We had a genuinely friendly conversation about the property lines, got documentation from the county about it, and thought we solved our problems. We didn't, and they still complained. Knowing they climbed over the fence again, we asked them nicely to knock it off. They ended up putting no trespassing signs up facing our property. We had another conversation. We put our own no trespassing signs up, and we planted some tall hedges and wildflowers to create another barrier. That was supposed to be the final warning, but we ended up giving several more final warnings. About a month ago, we had the county police trespass the entire family, making them leave and making it clear that they'll be arrested if they come back. About 2 weeks ago, the neighborhood's 15 and 17-year-old came back onto the property and we had them arrested for trespassing. A few days after that, we had the neighbor couple arrested for sneaking on. About 3 days ago, we had the neighbors arrested again after banging on our front door yelling at us for having their kids arrested previously. They seem to have an issue with everything we do and are even mailing us letters about what they don't like. For example, that we legally shoot starlings, that they are allergic to our flowers, and they think our very small yearly controlled burns are horribly illegal. Despite the fact that we are licensed to do them, they are accusing us of using illegal materials and campfires, and they think our greenhouse/vivaria is bad since it has non-native species, etc. Are we the a-holes here? I feel like we've done everything possible as respectfully as possible to avoid getting to this point, and I feel like we have made as much compromise as is reasonable. Update: we now got a restraining order against the neighbors, and ever since then the situation seemed to have calmed down. They are now rightfully scared to get close and annoy us again. And guys, I would love to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? Please let us know what you think in the comments. Nonetheless, a user in the comments said, "Not the a-hole, you have warned them, the police have warned them, they cannot just come onto your property willy-nilly like that." And another user suggested, "Not the a-hole, get restraining orders." It reminds me of this pro-revenge story where the guy ended up buying the neighbor's property and served them their eviction notice pending the end of their current lease on a duplex. Another user also said, "Not the a-hole, why do they keep coming onto your property? I mean, it is a huge acreage that has things like woods or a pond that their property doesn't have maybe. Are the teens smoking pot in your greenhouse or something? What was the entire family doing on your property? Picnicking? Sorry, I'm just fascinated with this crazy family." And guys, if you have watched until here and enjoyed the stories about crazy neighbors, I would really appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even give the video a like, as that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled The Grammar Policeman, The Story of Dex. I have a few stories that would fit under regular revenge or malicious compliance, but nothing professional. If only there was a section of semi-professional, then I might be alright. I was talking to my friend about this because he has a nuclear story and I wanted to share it, and I was asking about details. He shot me down, but he also reminded me of Dex, and basically that whole job had a bunch of great stories. I was a second-year apprentice carpenter in 2012 and I got a job working up north in the oil and gas. We were on shift for 12 hours a day, but they basically only gave us work for 4 hours. Our real job was not to become a statistic. I'm not saying I'm smart in the general scheme of things, but in the trades you don't have a lot of sharp knives. I always liked math and I was good at it. On this job I was a low man on the totem pole and I did get bullied a bit. I'm not a big guy in height or width, but I've got a sharp tongue and a quick wit. Thick skin too. There was a 4th year guy named Dex who was on my 5-man team. I forgot what we were doing, but he made a wrong calculation and I corrected him. Not to be a dick, but because I didn't want our crew to get in trouble. That is why I became his target. He was about the same height as me, but roid white, and the anger that comes with it. So towards the end of our shift, a couple of turnarounds later, I come into the saw shack, which is basically our workshop to hide until the end of the shift. I come in and it is him, 2 newfies and 2 other guys working. So to those that don't know, newfies are the Irish of Canada. They are funny as hell, and all the ones that I know don't have a mean bone in their body. Their humor is observational with that crazy accent and all their colloquialisms. So these guys were actually in the saw shop working, and Dex asked me to take the output of the table saw, which is fine. I look and there is some writing on the output side of the table saw. In big black Sharpie was written, "Alex doesn't even know the difference between 20mm and 200mm. You're an idiot." Something like that. I am Alex and I don't know metric. Residential construction uses imperial and commercial uses metric. I've got no reference for metric measure because I was mostly residential until this job. It was true. So the room is quiet. I feel 5 pairs of eyes looking at me, wondering what I'm going to do, and all I can say is wow, as the hamster in my brain is on his treadmill a mile a minute thinking. It is near the end of the shift and this is our hiding spot, so more people are shuffling in and I can feel people looking over my shoulder reading. My dad, bless his soul, was a smart guy, and one thing he said was, if someone is bullying you, stand up to them. You will probably get your ass kicked, but a bully only looks for easy targets, and if someone fights back there will always be another victim that doesn't. They will move on, but he was more pragmatic than anything. So I asked the room if anyone had a red Sharpie. One was produced and I began to make grammatical, punctuation and spelling corrections on Dex's manifesto. So one of the newfies and all of his accent and colloquialisms said to the room something like, "By and by Lord Dunderin and sweet baby Jesus, wouldn't ya know it? He corrected the spelling." The room absolutely erupted in laughter with the exception of one person. Dex. He was livid. Most people were laughing at the newfie humor, but that is not how Dex saw it. In front of everyone, he told me I was going to die for this. So we had to go into our lunchroom for the shift debriefing, and Dex was noticeably absent. Apparently he grabbed a belt sander and sanded off the message before the next shift could see it. But that is not the end. We were fly in and fly out, and Dex lived about 3 hours away from me, but we shared the same major airport. So I went to my foreman, who was also a newfie, and gave him a heads up. He was a stone's throw away from retirement and he did not like waves. Dex was a tidal wave of trouble. So we were in a quasi-union. I don't actually know what they did, but I do know one thing. They didn't like to do anything except for collecting dues. So my foreman calls our steward, who is the absolutely laziest guy I've ever seen. He had the world's greatest job security and he had a hammer that never got touched. Like if you could take it back to the store, he got it from as if he bought it yesterday, like he polished it. This guy didn't like doing anything, but he especially didn't like filling out forms or defending people that are a-holes. So what did he do? He called the threat against me an incident. An incident is not specifically an accident, it can be anything. And up north there were lots of drugs and a condition of employment is no drugs. So the steward got Dax pissed, as in he had to do a piss test. I think the threat he made against me in itself was enough to get him fired, but the piss test was ironclad physical evidence. And Dax did not pass. Once the paperwork was done, they went to Dax's room, made him pack up and took him to the Aerodome for the next flight out. Moral of the story, don't F with the grammar police. And guys, I gotta say, I really enjoyed this story. There's just something about bullies getting what they deserve that is really appealing in a story. And the next one is titled Racist Douche Landlord Gets a Surprise. In the early to mid 2000s, I went to college in a small rural Ohio town. I wanted to get out of the dorm, so I went searching for a place to rent and came upon a small one-story prefab house, think double wide trailer on a concrete slab. It was clean, but it was old and hadn't aged well. The landlord was not mean, but he was cheap. Fixes to the house took forever and he only used old crap he found in his barn. For example, the sprayer for the kitchen sink broke. It took him 2 weeks of searching to find a used one covered in dirt and spider webs to install. Another time I lost my house key. The lock was so old the local hardware store could not make a new key and the locksmith suggested we simply replace the lock. It took the landlord the better part of a month to replace the lock with yet again another used part from his barn, during which time I had to petition my roommates to let me in. It was a pain, but again, the guy was not malicious, so I dealt with it. The house had serious plumbing issues. All of the drain pipes were cast iron and went through the slab, meaning they were jammed with rust and inaccessible. At first this was only a minor inconvenience. The shower and kitchen sink drained slow. When this happened, the landlord would show up with a snake and try to clear the rust with limited results. Several months into the lease, it got so bad that the shower would not drain at all and raw sewage backed up in the laundry room sink. We desperately called the landlord. It took 2 days to get a hold of him, at which time he said, can't you wait for a few weeks when my plumber friend can take a look at it? No, we cannot. He finally caved and called an actual plumber. The final bill was over $1,000. This landlord owned several houses close together. One of them went up for rent and a buddy of mine who happened to be Latino wanted to rent it. The landlord took one look at him and said it had already been rented, which it hadn't. It sat on the market for another few months before he rented it to a white couple. Around this time I was getting my hair cut and making small talk with the stylist. We were chatting and I casually mentioned where I lived and she said, "Wait, is racist douche landlord your landlord? That guy is a Klansman. He tried to get my sister, the local seamstress, to sew a patch on this white sheet and she refused." Now it made sense. I was pissed. The petty revenge. On the last day of my move out at the end of my lease, I had to clean the fridge out. I opened the hatch to the attic and disposed of all of the food in the fridge, making sure to open the Tupperware containers full of leftovers, gallon of milk, vegetables and half-eaten rotisserie chicken. I threw it as far as I could into the back of the attic and then I closed the hatch and finished moving out. He ended up keeping my deposit for other reasons, but I was not upset. I never found out what came of the rotting food in the attic, but I'm sure he had fun playing What Is That Smell? Edit number 2. As far as the racism thing, we had no definitive proof that is why my friend got turned down. I'm sure we could have done something, but honestly, we were just dumb college students. As far as me inadvertently effing over the next tenant, just stop. I was friends with the neighbor and it was vacant for over a month after I moved out. Would you rent a place that smelled terrible? No single mothers were harmed in this petty revenge. Well guys, and I will let you ponder whether or not this story really happened, but all in all I would say it was pretty entertaining and that is what matters in the end. And guys, sadly, we have already reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest you to check out my Binge Watch Endless playlist on YouTube, which you will now see in the left or right corner of your screen. In addition, if you still cannot get enough and crave more exclusive Ripe content, then please head over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive Ripe videos that you will find nowhere else. In addition, I would just like to say I am so grateful for your support as usual, but lately we almost always reach 1000 likes, which helps me tremendously. Thank you very much for your amazing support. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again tomorrow.